Hi guys, welcome back to Infinite Possibilities, the podcast where we explore the lives of amazing people, their choices, challenges and opportunities. And today I have a very special guest, Karen Brown.
Hi. Hey Karen, how you going?
Good, thank you so much for being here.
That's my pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, Karen, so what's your 1 minute intro? What do you do?
What do I do? Well, currently, big question. Currently, I'm a dad, so I have two kids, a 2-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl. I'm the senior teacher at Total Fusion, running the teacher training program, and teaching about a dozen classes there a week. And then I'm also a musician, so I create and record works and tour with that. And I've been doing that for the past 30 odd years and been lucky enough to tour the world with my music and still get to perform at a high level. So I'm very, very grateful for that. So that's me. Oh, actually, one thing I should mention is I have an online learning portal as well.
Ooh, so, shout out,
plug. Yeah, I've got to remember that. So the Foundation Method is what it's called, and it's an online yoga and wellness program that I built during COVID.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so people can find that just foundationmethod.com, one word. Or yogicam.com.au, and they can find all that stuff there.
Sounds good. And what's your musician stage name?
Stage name,
plug
MC Shoreshock. So it's SHURE, like the microphone, SHOCK. And you can just put that into Google and it'll come up with the website and all the social media stuff there.
Yeah, and how did you come up with that name? Were you racking your brain? Like, what were the other name alternatives?
Oh, look, like originally it was MCNO3, number 3.
Gosh.
Yeah, and that was like back in the rave days in the 90s. And then one night, like in a very sweaty rave, I got a bit excited and bit the microphone, and I was so covered in sweat. And my body, I was standing about an inch of water, and it shocked me, and so hence the term Shoreshock.
You actually got like a small.
Yeah, that's it. So whether it was me hitting it on my tooth so hard that it was a nervous shock, or whether it was an electrical shock, I'll still never know, because it was about 3:30 on a Sunday morning at this club. So so that name came out of there. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
Bit of a story to it, huh?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Cool. So Cam has had an amazing life, so we're gonna go right from the beginning. What kind of kid were you like growing up?
Very joyous from what I remember, and being the oldest son, assuming the mantle of the oldest son and the responsibilities as that, introducing my brother and sister, and we lived in Melbourne, grew up there for the first part of my life, and then went off to Perth, and then back to Melbourne, and then to Singapore, and then back to Melbourne up until the start of my high schooling, and then finished that off up in Brisbane. But very active, we're a very active family, so riding bikes and chasing dogs, had a lot of pets in the house, and got into martial arts at a very young age, so I got into Taekwondo, and had an amazing teacher that taught us meditation and mindfulness and a lot of respect and discipline, and that was great. My brother and I both did that, and then played a lot of soccer, a lot of sports, bike riding, and spent a lot of time on my mum's farm. My mum and her relatives came from
Sounds fun.
Northern Victoria, southern New South Wales, like right on the Murray. And they had rice farms, and so it was great.
Good food living on the farm.
It was a lot of good food and a lot of space for us to run around and be energetic kids and swim in the channel, and had a lot of cousins there that we used to hang out with, and so holidays and family holidays and stuff were mostly spent up at the farm, and it was great. It was really good. So it's a good childhood.
So you were very active, but were you very academic?
Not really, no. And I think the thing that really worked against me academia-wise is that I went to a lot of different schools because we moved around. So there was always the struggle of trying to fit in, which in hindsight, when I look back and years later, I'd realise was linked to my adoption stuff. There was a lot of sort of separation stuff that was my experience. It wasn't common to other people, but also because we moved around a lot. It just, being the new kid and settling in had all its issues. and academia was just never something that I really gravitated towards. I was more of a natural performing artist, and you know, loved music but didn't study it, and humanities and those type of subjects. I gravitated more towards that type of stuff rather than the sciences, much to my dad's dismay, because he wanted me to be their ambassador to Indonesia when I'd finished school, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to be that guy. But you know, so I learned Indonesian and got very much involved in sporting when I got into high school. So gymnastics and rowing, and gymnastics was my prime sport. I stopped growing, so I didn't end up sort of following on the rowing. But yeah, played soccer as well when I was at school, the real football, as they call it. So that's my schooling, sort of in a nutshell.
That's cool. And how did you learn Indonesian?
Very slowly, but we had a very patient Indonesian teacher, Ibu Turner, and her and her husband spent quite a bit of time living in Indonesia, and then they took us over there to Bali, and when I was in about grade 9, and so it was great, and we got to see how the real people lived, and got to flex some of our Indonesian skills. And then we went to Lombok in the 90s, which was really very traditional at that stage. There wasn't much tourism at all, and so we had teenagers running down the streets screaming, saying "Raksasa Putih, Raksasa Putih, white monster, white monster." They'd never seen a white person before.
Wow! And
then we climbed Mount Rinjani, and it was a real experience. We got served cat.
Whoa!
I know. I was like, this chicken has got remarkable claws that don't look like from a chicken. And I was like, ada kucing, and they laughed at me, and I was like, I think we just ate cat. So it was a real experience.
Did it taste different though?
No, it tastes a bit like chicken.
Yeah,
so it's just
that's
like
what I think.
whatever. But yeah, there was a family there that had proper culture shock, and they had to go home. Like, they got really freaked out. And because of my time in Singapore, I was just like, oh, this is just reminding me of my time over there, and it was great. It was really
You were
fun.
having fun though.
I was having fun, and they were like, this is scary. I was like, really? What's there to be scared of? Everyone's really nice. But anyway, that's the way it happened for some.
Yeah, cool. And so when you were younger, you moved around a lot. Did you hate that, or were you always excited for every place?
No, I really didn't like it, because I just get to make a group of friends, and then I'd move. And of course, when you're the new kid at school, there's always the hazing of the new kid, where you know, like, the most uncool kid's got to come and pick on you to try and assert like you down in the pecking order, and you've kind of got to go, no, that's not going to happen, and like, you know, you have to stand your ground, and it's just awkward and uncomfortable, and so it took me a real long time to find my people in my school, and it didn't happen until I repeated in grade 11. So it was challenging. That was challenging, but there was an upside to it, which is I learned to make friends quite naturally and easily, and learn to embrace change a lot more than a lot of other people, you know. And also the travel and the world knowledge that came through that means that I could see through the lens a lot more open-mindedly than a lot of kids that were my age, and that was something that I noticed when I was in my high school, that there was just like a very small-minded mentality, and I was like, how did you guys get like that? And then it was like, oh, you've never traveled. And I remember guys in my band years later, like, they'd never been out of Southeast Queensland, like, and I was like, you haven't been to Byron Bay? No. I was like, oh my god, you haven't been overseas? No. Oh my god. Wow. So it was there were positives to what we did as well.
Yeah, wow. And also you mentioned that you were adopted, so what was kind of the story behind that? When did you find out, by the way?
So I'd always known, thankfully, because I think we have enough information these days to know when people find out all of a sudden they have massive crisis, and I'd known personally a few people in my growing up years of watching people have massive meltdowns and things like that. But luckily, Mum thought it was a great idea to always let me know. So as much as I'd always knew that it didn't upset me, occasionally, I'd come to blows with my brother and sister around those type of topics, but that was very quickly, dampened out by Mum and Dad, and it's just kids being kids. But I never felt weird about it, but there was the underlying separation stuff that was really becoming quite evident in my teens and further on from there, around relationship and separation anxiety, and played out in the bullying situations and stuff like that, because I always felt separate too. And then many years later, when I started putting it all together, and understanding it and realizing that my mum didn't want to let me go, it was just something back in the 70s that you had to embrace, because there was no child support, there was no family support, and my mum's mum was a single mum and a very strict religious household, so she would have been literally homeless, and Mum wouldn't have been able to embrace that. And it was just a one-off with my dad, so that was, he knew about it, but it was that first 6 weeks back in the day. What they used to do is they used to take you to the orphanage, and then they'd feed you and wait for your adopting parents to be ready. But I think they had 6 weeks or something like that where you were part of the orphanage. So a lot of that separation anxiety, sort of early childhood stuff for me came from that, that first 6 weeks where little babies want to know that they feel safe in the world. And and I had very loving parents and a very supportive environment. But for me, there was just that deep level of separation anxiety, and that was all that first 6 weeks. Because back in the day, they used to have these just giant rooms with dozens and dozens of little plastic tubs with all the babies, and they just feed them and put them back. And so, little babies just want love and connection, So, that's that story. Yeah. But I put it all together later in life, and met my mum and dad during COVID. That was one of the great gifts that came out from that, and that's been a really healing, beautiful experience. And now we have a very natural friendship and relationship, and I'm very thankful for that. And we just went down and saw them a couple of weeks ago, and brought my wife and my son down. And it was really great. It's really fun. So, and strangely, my dad settled a few hundred meters down the road from where my dad, who brought me up, built. So like literally off the same road. Crazy. And so my brothers on my dad's side and myself, we have shared memories of growing up around the area, which is wild, because they were from Ballarat, so completely different regional area. So it's just crazy luck that it all worked out like that.
World.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but that's awesome. Cool. And then you also mentioned bullying and stuff. So do you have any kind of general advice? Because schooling can be quite hard. Yeah,
it can. I actually spoke to some of my students about this the other day, and they said, "Oh, look, our kids don't go through this because we taught them leadership skills." And I was like, huh, interesting. Look, this is just a theory that they've talked about, and it seems to have worked for them. I mean, it's very difficult these days that social media. It's just very hard to get away with or get away from. But look, I mean, I ended up standing up to the bully.
Wow,
one of the bullies. Yeah, I didn't actually hurt anybody or do anything like that, but I could have got myself in real trouble. But I needed to stand my ground there, and after that there was, it kind of subsided a bit after that. And then when I learned to dance, suddenly the bullies wanted to learn how to dance from me because girls liked it. And then they were like, "Oh, can you teach me?" I'm like, "I don't think so. Like, pretty sure you guys were picking on me for way too long, and I'm not into it." So, success is the best form of revenge.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, it's a real epidemic in schools these days, and I just wish they would figure out how to sort it out.
Yeah. Was there anything in particular that they bullied you for? Because you're that sporty kid. Like, I'd imagine you'd be pretty popular.
Yeah, look, I mean, it was just weird things like, oh, you're from Victoria, or like, and I was a little bit small. Right? I know it was not very smart stuff. But then bullying is not very smart.
Yeah,
it's like, it doesn't show a high developed intellect or compassional. Or like, human developed psyche. It's just base level stuff.
Yeah, and when growing up, did you ever want to be like a sports superstar, right? Because you were pretty into the sport.
No, look, I mean, no, like, I think because I was in the wrong grade when I was growing up in high school. And because I was in the wrong grade, it's just meant that I was genetically smaller than a lot of the other guys. So I just thought, well, I'm just not competing. Like, I'm just not in that. I don't have an option. Younger? Yeah, so I came up from Victoria, and at that stage, grade 8 was grade 9 in Brisbane, something like that.
Yeah.
And because I'm November birthday,
little baby.
Yeah, so I was just little. I was just younger.
Yeah.
And yeah, my parents didn't pick up on that because I was in such a hustle to get us into school. And then when I repeated in grade 11, then it all started making sense. And then I was like, oh, I am competitive and I am strong enough to weigh myself up against the others. Yeah. It's just in the wrong grade. Yeah. So by that stage, then I started becoming quite good at gymnastics, and we started winning awards and doing all that type of stuff. But I wasn't after the Olympics or anything like that.
Yeah.
By that stage, I'd decided, or I'd discovered the performing arts. Ooh. And that was and dancing, and then I was like, that feels more like me. I remember sitting there and I was really depressed after doing some exams, and I was sitting on the side of this ledge, and I was like, I'm gonna jump. Like, I've studied so hard for this thing, and I just got a B or something like that. And I was gutted. And one of the prefects came up to me and he was like, oh man, you're really good at dancing. Maybe you'll make a career out of that. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And then about 10 years later, I saw that same guy, and he'd come out as gay, and he was wearing like black leather pants and no shirt on, raving at the party that I was emceeing. And then after the gig had closed, he started screaming at the top of his voice, pointing. He's like, I made him famous. I told him that he'd be good at that. And I was like, oh, thanks, buddy. Actually, pretty sure I did the hard work.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Maybe he planted the seed. We give that guy a little bit of credit.
I give him some credit for sure. That's right.
Half a seed.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, wow. And I also heard that Grandma Brown had a bit of influence on you musically.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So my grandma was a concert pianist, and so music was always in the house when we were growing up, and she brought a lot of music and spiritual understanding, and she was into, she had a very open mind. But yeah, there was always music in the house, and I'd come home from school, and because she lived with us until when she was about 96, and so she'd play piano in the afternoon every time we'd come home.
Such a cool grandma.
She was cool.
Welcome
yeah.
Back.
Yeah.
Play you a little song.
Yeah, she was cool like that. She loved the piano. So like, not that I played piano, but musicality rubbed off on me for sure.
Yeah, but your grandma didn't sing, huh?
She did too.
She did?
Yeah.
Wow, she sounds like a cool grandma.
Yeah, she sounded a little bit like Dame Nellie Melba. So she used to warble, which was her thing. But she gave it all a good go.
Yeah, that's cool. And growing up, did your parents want you to be anything in particular?
Yeah, my dad wanted me to be the ambassador to Indonesia.
Yeah.
So there was that.
Were you tempted? You're like, gonna make dad proud?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. No, I do remember there were times where I was, getting quite excited about, meeting these government officials, and Dad did a lot of aid work through Asia. Yeah. So we'd have, dinner parties and meet people, especially when we were in Singapore, who in hindsight, they were, government officials and those type of things. And we had to behave ourselves and eat properly and do all that stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I was kind of up for it for a little bit, but then just the amount of study of stuff that I just didn't enjoy, I was like, I'm not into this, so I think I need to find something more suited to me.
Yeah, that's cool. And so what happened after high school, the wannabe actor?
Well, that's right. Yeah, so my mum said, don't audition for acting because you're not going to be able to survive. And so I auditioned for drama teaching, which was silly because I didn't have the education to do that. And then the guys who were auditioning me said, oh, look, you would have got into acting. Why didn't you audition for acting? And I got really, really dark about that. I was just like, oh, damn it. Like, you know, so I got into food science, which was hospitality. It was like a diploma of hospitality and business. So you do a bit of chefing, do a bit of like front. Oh, it was great. I found a love for food at that stage. And then it was like, okay. And I started working in restaurants, and that facilitated my lifestyle and gave me money in my pocket, introduced me to a whole brand new nighttime people.
Ooh, oh no.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. It was really good. And as a like, you know, a 17-year-old boy, it was really exciting and fun, and just these people introduced me to the world of nightclubs and adult lifestyles and
Did your parents like it?
No, they didn't.
Different perspective.
Yeah, that's right. They were like, what are you wasting your time there for? Okay. I mean, my dad loved me being in hospitality, loved it, because it gave him access to good wine.
Yeah, okay.
He'd be like, will you bring that home? I'm like, yeah, I'll bring that home. Like, you know, so he had a love of wine, and I did at that stage as well. So
yeah. And you mentioned a little bit of chefing. So what's your best dish?
I make a really mean lamb souvlaki. So I met this old Greek guy in New South Wales or Sydney when I lived there, and he owned the little 7-Eleven type of shop down the road. And we'd see him in the afternoon, and I remember saying, he was this grumpy old man, and I remember him talking about, he was like, oh, your wife doing the cooking. And I said, no, I do the cooking. And he was like, oh, and he goes, do you like lamb souvlaki? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I tell you my secret. And the secret was that you use a bottle of teriyaki sauce.
Oh.
A bottle of teriyaki sauce and the red wine and the oregano and the garlic and the pepper and the lemon. Game changer. It just made it really sticky and nice, and so good. So I'm very happy to make that. I haven't made it in a while. It's giving me good ideas.
Making me hungry actually.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and so for hospitality, were you in like the fine dining kind of thing?
Yeah, or? So I always, after all of the training, I met a crew of hospitality people, as you do. You meet your team. And the manager there, James Scott, who was an amazing man and mentored me amazingly at that stage in my life. We went from Sirocco, which was this little Greek place over in South Bank, and then we went to the Lyrebird, which is underneath the Performing Arts Centre.
Wow.
And so then I met a whole bunch of friends who are still my friends to the day. And we used to do, you know, the pre-show, and then the intermission, and then the after show, and drink too much and carry on, and do all the wine dinners and meet all the winemakers and take them out for dinner after the dinner, and it was a party. It was great. And that introduced me to fine dining, and that became my fallback career up until about 12 to 15 years ago.
Wow. And how was the experience in fine dining? Very, very particular about every single dish.
Yeah, everything. It's high pressure. It's an intense world. It's a lot of fun when you're younger, but once you start hitting your 30s, it's starting to wear a bit thin, and then after that, it's just a lot of hard work, which is fine, and it's a lot of fun. But I quit drinking, and also the doctor said to me, no more hospitality, it's just not good for you. I had a back issue amongst other things. And that's what really took me into yoga teaching, thank God.
Hello.
But for me, doing the hospital full time, I couldn't imagine doing it at this stage. It's just, it's too much.
Yeah. And then tell me about that transition into yoga. Is that kind of what the doctor prescribed you? Like, yoga for the back, yoga for pregnancy, yoga for old people, yoga for everyone. Like,
that's right. Well, I just started, I was in transition. I just, I couldn't do high-end hospitality anymore. It was really bad for me, and I decided to resign from the lifestyle. So it just didn't make sense, especially if I wasn't drinking, to then be selling people $700 to $5,000 bottles of wine and not know what it's like. It's just not. It's not a game that you can play, or you can, but you're just not very good at it. You know? And you know, I had a lot of pride associated with my time in hospitality. I always really focused on being the best at what I did, and it took me all around the country. So, but it just got to the point where it just wasn't matching up the lifestyle that it was. Around the time of my daughter coming into the world, I had to ask some big questions. You know, it's like, is this style of life sustainable? Because it was a bit of a surprise. The partner that I was with at the time, we were told that we'd never have kids, so we became hyper focused on career. And then we ended up getting pregnant, and which was wonderful, but it was just this giant handbrake. It was like, so now you have to keep another human alive. And that's very different to trying to keep yourself alive. So that was wonderful, and it was amazing that it happened, but it just made me ask some really big, deep questions around, is this the sort of person that I want to be moving forward? It made me look at my music career and the way that was going, and ask some deeper questions. I mean, at that stage I was working, I was kind of getting into the later stages of my career, and I was doing residencies for some of the not so savoury nightclubs in King's Cross in Sydney, and then I started doing these workshops for these disadvantaged kids, and that really changed things, because I saw how much inspiration and how much joy it brought to these young boys, especially, about learning how to rap and the possibility of being able to make a living out of it. And I just thought, I can't have these guys looking up to me and saying, oh, he's the guy that works at Dragonfly, which is like the home of every gangster in King's Cross. You know, it's like, it's not a good look, you know. And so I started, and then I started going much deeper into my yoga practice, and and then my back injury was just the nudge that I needed to kind of really face that this part of my life needed to change, and that's what took me into the next stage, you know. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I just knew that I needed to get myself into a place where I felt more well, and I was quite burnt out, quite run down, and so getting involved in yoga just as something to help rehabilitate my back as well as my lifestyle. Then started going much deeper, and that's what took me into teacher training, and the universe opened up, and I surrendered to it, and then the changes started opening up, and thank God I did, so very happy.
That's cool. And for yoga, was it love at first sight? Did you just love yoga as soon as you started?
Yes and no. I consider the beginning of my journey when I was about 7 learning meditation, because meditation is one of the limbs of yoga. A lot of people think yoga is just the postures, but as you know, being a yoga teacher, it's a lot more than that. It's the breath, the inward turning, the self-study. It's all the values of the yamas and niyamas. It's the, it's a full way of living, So when I first started getting involved in the asana practice, it was a little bit later, it was in my late teens, and then dance and music and martial arts was kind of like my asana practice, but I kept maintaining the meditation, and I really kept developing the meditation up into my early 20s, and then I took a deep dive into tantric yoga and the deep energetics of more of an esoteric kind of world of yoga that introduced me into yoga nidra and reiki and like energetics, and then and that was fascinating and mystical, and I had incredible connection where I'm seeing energy coming out of people, and we're having these eye-gazing experiences where we're seeing memories from our earlier past parts of our lives, and yeah, it was wild. And so that kind of like hooked me in that this practice will be something that I want to follow for the rest of my life. And that took me into lots of different styles of yoga, from Iyengar to Ashtanga. And then in my mid-20s I went back to acting college finally, and I met one of our teachers was a lady called Lynn Bradley, who was an Ashtanga master. And so I got right into Ashtanga at that stage, which is great for a 20-something-year-old boy with lots of energy and range of motion and strength. And it was just something that just really resonated with me, Ashtanga. And she never really used she had a very thick accent, and she'd walk around with a bamboo cane and hit your leg if it was in the wrong position. These were back in the days where it just had to be done a certain way.
Yeah,
and of course we've grown more since then. So yeah, it's been an evolving love.
That's cool. And when you did your yoga teacher cert, at that point were you certain that you wanted to teach, or was it just kind of for your own personal practice?
No, it was a career move. So
nice.
But by the time I got ready to do that, so I was in my late 30s. So I was an older teacher, I was an older student, and I'd had a life of practice beforehand. Literally my yoga teacher suggested it to me, and I had this idea that I would do it one day when I'm ready, probably when I'm like 70 or something like this, and I'm old and grey with a long beard, and and then I would be
everyone will listen to you,
right? And it's like, he's old, like, give him some credit, he made it that far. So the opportunity coming up was amazing. The fact that he suggested it, I had no money at the stage, and he said, "That's cool, I'll put your name on this list and you get a discount." And then my job provider at the time said, "We'll pay for it." So it was a God job. Good. It was a job of yoga coming for me, and then I went straight into classes after that.
Wow. And how did you sort of develop your yoga teaching style? And how would you describe it? Like, someone rocks up to Cameron's class.
Well, it's a combination of, like, if it's a hot yoga class or a yin yoga class, the similarity between the two different styles is that I'll theme and I'll centralize the theme around a concept, whether it's compassion or love or the yoga 8 limbs or whatever, which I'm doing at the moment. So there's a narrative, and that style of narrative is called satsang. It means like sitting with truth, where I'll offer ideas and ruminations around the concepts that we're exploring. Because up until I did my teacher training, I hadn't really experienced that. And then when I did my teacher training and I met these teachers that were facilitating, it blew my mind. Like, it was just like the next level. Everything before that was just asana. It was just exercise. And it was very useful. And there were some, like, I did a lot of Japanese yoga, and there was a lot of ideas around seasonal diet adjusts and mindfulness around different organs and different meridians. And so it's because they have 4 seasons in Japan, that's how it evolved. And ki yoga or ryu yoga, or another way of calling it is okidoki yoga. And it's super cute. So I'd learned that there was a lot of mindfulness, and there was a lot of kind of esoteric and deeper layers that I was becoming in touch with, but I'd never heard someone string it all together with this theming. And after, I don't know, 30 years on the microphone, with my music career, it just resonated as a way of sharing my truth. And at that stage, I had something to share. So this gave me a structure and a way to do that, to make the impact more than asana, more than just wellness through breath and movement, but a much deeper layer to help people transform their mind as well as their body. So that's and I would think that the hot classes are mindfully put together in a very anatomical and even peak posed kind of thematic way, challenging with many options. So you can be a beginner to an advanced student in that class, which takes a lot of time to figure out how to do. But because we teach group classes as opposed to graded classes, that's something that I learned to evolve as well, and that's been a great skill. So I think that sums it up.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite type of yoga to teach?
Power yoga.
Really?
Power yoga and yin.
Guy?
No, power yoga and yin. I can't decide between the two. I love power yoga because hot power yoga, because I just love the way I feel afterwards. It's just so exhilarated. And then I love teaching yin because it gives me an opportunity to really dive into the theme and not have to be cueing so heavily.
Yeah. And time for you to relax, because you demo all your hot classes, and I don't know how you do it, because you teach a lot of classes.
Well, so not all of them are demo, and but I have to demo quite a lot more where we met at Mount Gravatt, just because there's a lot of English second language, and it requires more.
So it's a Mount Gravatt special, huh?
More so, you teach who's in front of you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas if I'm at Newstead, walking and talking is a little bit more regular, I guess.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and let's talk about your musician career. So is it true, the starving artist?
It is a true thing, but that's a choice, you know, and that was the good thing about having my music career supported by my hospitality career, because the lifestyles were comparable. So it wasn't like I was teaching yoga at 5 o'clock in the morning and finishing the music world at 3 o'clock in the morning.
No.
So it was like everything was lining up. So by the time I finished work, it was just a natural progression. Everyone in hospitality went out to dance and drink anyway. So it followed on from that. And at that stage, in the early parts of my career, the dance music world didn't start until 1 a.m. and would go through till 6 a.m. And then there'd be after parties, official after parties that would go through till midday, and then we'd end up at someone's house. So it was an all-night affair. But in the beginning, I think I worked for 10 years for no money, so never got paid. And then they said, oh, we'll give you $50 to be 8 hours on a microphone. And I was the show. So I'd just shake I know everyone there, I'd support all of the DJs, I'd be doing all that stuff. And they were doing me a favor, giving me $50. I'm like, it's pretty sure there's a couple of thousand people in here. And I'm the host, so I don't know if that's fair. And I remember when I first started putting my foot down and asking for money, and I lost all these shows, and I was like, well, you know what, I don't care, because I'm not going to play for that anymore, and you guys are making a truckload of money, and you can share some. And then it was actually divine right thing to do, because it opened up a world to the MC Shawshock moniker, and then I started working for more financially set up nightclub environments, and then the money started going up. And but I couldn't have done it without hospitality. I had a lot of friends that wanted to be purists, and they let everything go to be an artist, and they were always up, can I have some of your wine? I forgot to bring some food to dinner, can I eat some of yours? And it was just and I remember seeing that, just going, for God's sake, just get a job. And get a job and work harder, is all I'm saying. Because there were times when I had my band where we would work, I'd do 80 hours of hospitality, and then I was up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning on the phone for a couple of hours before I go back to the restaurant. And then in the night times, we'd either be gigging, or we'd go to late night rehearsal spaces, and we'd be up until all hours of the night, and it's just a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hard work. And then on the weekends, some of those weekends with my band and with the DJs I was working with, I remember between Thursday and Sunday playing in different states 2 times a day. So I was flying in between states 2 times a day from Thursday until Sunday. And I'd played in every state twice by the time I hit Monday morning, including after parties and then red-eye flights back from Perth. And it was just crazy. It was just, so, but then that's just what you got to do to make it work. You have to be resilient and hardworking, and much more than just being talented. And, it's just, it is hard, and it's harder now than it ever was. There's less money in it now than there ever was, and the infrastructure in the industry shot to pieces. So I'm very thankful that I have yoga to support this next stage of my life.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess you replaced hospitality with yoga.
That was the intention.
Okay.
So when because I knew that doing full-time music just brings a side out of me that I don't enjoy, which is, you know, quite self-seeking, and you can be self-obsessed. And the reason, because it takes so much work. And I continue to do it now, and I enjoy doing it, but having to run your own label and run your own touring agency and run your own, all of your mechanisms, or getting other people to do it, and learning to deal with the reality of the people that work in the industry and their mindset is pretty challenging, you know. So yeah, I just find this balance works for me. I really wanted to be a full-time artist, and I remember seeing Michael Franti and touring with his family and everything, and I was like, that's the model. And then when it happened to me, and it happened for me, it just didn't feel like what I'd expected. And I was like, oh, this is a lot more challenging in not in a good way, you know. And yeah, just that real hustle, became a real hustler for the work. And yeah, it's just a side of me that I'm happy to let go of and just enjoy what comes. But then I've worked a long time to get the benefit of being able to enjoy good gigs at this stage in my life without having to be a hustler as much as I used to be. So that's useful.
Yeah, and so you said the first 10 years didn't make any money. Why didn't you give up? Like,
I was obsessed. I was obsessed. Yeah. So
what was it? Was it
it was just
performing aspect, or?
Yeah, it was the sense of identity. It was the community. Everyone was just so loving and embracing, and there was a lot of sort of PLUR back in the 90s, peace, love, unity, respect. And it gave me a sense of community that I just didn't get when I was growing up, you know, moving around a lot, and I wasn't really into football and fighting at the pub. So I was like, I don't know, you guys do that, we'll just rave. And met some really beautiful, fun, awesome, creative people, and just being part of that scene really helped me feel like valued. It was nice. And so yeah, it was good.
And how do you come up with your music? Do you get writer's block?
Yeah, so I did actually get writer's block. And I remember going up to, so I'd had like in the early part of my career, I'd write when I got the vibe. But I got the vibe a lot. So I just used to write. So I've got these like folders and folders of lyrics that I've kept over the years. It's just, you know, kind of a treasure trove.
Is it usually in the shower?
No, it's like, it'd be like after a gig at like 5 a.m. sitting in a car park with a piece of paper, or it'd be on an aeroplane home, or I'd drive out to the bush after the rave and sit there by the river and write, or you know, when stuff happened in life. But then when it started becoming like professional, and I started needing to write lyrics for shows and write lyrics for records and stuff like that, I had all this work that was already created, and I had this work that was created through channeling, so connecting with, you know, higher power, higher vision, which I really expanded when I moved to Byron Bay in my mid-20s. I had a lot of these experiences that really sort of triggered an opening for me that brought this incredible music through me. And then, so I kind of relied on that for a while, and then suddenly I started getting like touring a lot and got writer's block. I remember saying to Nick Cave, because I saw him in at the restaurant, and I was like, what are you doing? He goes, oh, writer's block. He goes, oh, well, you can call it whatever you like, man. But when you get down to write, just write a lot. And then I read Julia Cameron's The Artist Way, which is like a 12-step program for artists about how to unlock your latent creativity. And most of it's because you have this ingrained perception of what you think an artist is supposed to be. We have this idea they're supposed to be dysfunctional, addicted, lazy, somehow in tune with some vibe, you know, and that's how I do my thing, which is just an incorrect stereotype that people adopt to try and fit into the mold, which was my case. And when I realized, oh, it's just a structure, and it's a, you know, it's a practice. And when I figured out that it was a practice, and you just do it, and then it works. It's like growing a muscle. It's a creative muscle. The more you use it, the more structure you create around using it, the more product you get. And that's been the case. And I still use those systems these days. And by the time I've finished, it's done. I don't need to revisit.
Wow.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's great.
Wow, and how would you sort of describe your music style?
My music is in lyrics, so I'm a lyricist. So I write what the music channels through me. So everything from hip hop lyrics, which are more meaningful or fun or vibey, or to sort of reggae and dancehall. I got quite well known for, like a reggae soca style of vocal twang that I would put over records, and then conscious lyrics, so stuff that meant things, and I would write that lyric in a type of channeling, and then apply it to the music that was being presented. So I guess that's the best way that I can describe it. And sometimes I sing, sometimes I rap, sometimes I do spoken word.
Wow, you do everything.
It depends on what the sound that's given to me.
Wow, do you want to recite some of your lyrics? I know you probably don't want to rap without the music.
Yeah, sure. So this one was, I wrote when I was down in Byron Bay, and it was kind of a channeled lyric, as full moon and sitting on the top of my mate's bus. Yeah, it was very vibey, right next to a cemetery and underneath the trees. Yeah, it was a little bit spooky, but no, it was a real channel. And so the lyrics, when you feel so trapped in the city, it's just a shame, cutting yourself off from a universal frame, maintaining your dominated culture, consciousness industrial, non-mystical, relationship becomes dysfunctional, separation lowering your vibration, the competition your mission, clouding your vision. So tell me, what's the truth when you're ruthless for energy? When you're weak, I do discover that you steal from another brother. Control drama, be it passive or aggressive, it's the way your parents taught you just how to maintain. You're not to blame. You got to let it go if you want to grow. Regurgitation of the darkness from your deepest embryo, rebirth to create a spiritual reality. Spiral to infinite high, transcend your physicality. Greed will lead you to the dark side. So focus on love, then your heart will revive. The only reality and parallel will respect. Get this paradigm in check, and then we get set for the next evolutionary step to proceed. A bridge over the generation gaps we lead. Contemplation rolling over and over, opening minds. New dimensional parts of the self is what we find. Destruction and negative paths we leave behind. A healing manifestation, it's time to shine. Open up. Prepare yourself for a taste and embrace as we open the case for the whole human race. DNA unwinding like a cyclone, propelling brain channels to paths unknown. There you
go. Wow, very deep actually.
Yeah.
You can drill
There's lots of different parts, and I can say that was, some of that stuff was going on in my head at the time, but it's just what flowed out of the pen,
Damn,
so.
Was it like a one-hit KO? You got it?
Yeah, it was just literally pen hit the paper and then took over. Like the pen takes over.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow.
Yeah,
feels like
lucky.
a natural gift.
Feels like it, but it's taken so much work, so much. And this is the thing, people say, you're an overnight success that took 20 years, or you're, it feels so natural, and you're like, yeah, but it's taken literally decades of practice to get to that point,
Yeah.
So that's, it's something I've always had to really work hard at what it is that I do creatively. Some people, it's just super easy. I mean, that contradicts it, right? So I just came, but I had to get myself into this state to then create that. So later on in life, I'd realize that's the optimal state that I need for creativity. And the yoga and meditation before taking the pen is necessary to facilitate that energy. So I need to get myself in that state. There's no point rocking up to the studio pissed off, angry, and there's no point. Like, it's just not going to flow. Whereas if I get myself into that optimal state, then by the time I take the pen, then it works.
That's cool. Yeah, so we're nearly at the end of the podcast, just a few more questions.
Yep.
So you've lived a crazy life. So what is the meaning of life in your opinion?
Meaning of life is for you to creatively decide what that is for you. Very much in a Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning type of way. I feel like we come into this life with innate gifts that we have to share. And if you can, like, the meaning of life is to discover those gifts. And once you've found out what they are, it's then to give them away to life. That's what I feel like the meaning of life is. And if you don't know what those gifts are, just ask somebody who knows you well, who loves you very much. Because often people on the outside can see it and know what that is, and often we're blind to it, or we think it's something different, and they're like, oh no, it's not that, So, but on a different tangent, the meaning of life is the meaning that we give it, and the fun begins when you realize it's a creative decision. For some of us, we're like, oh, I'm like this or I'm like that. But yoga helps us transcend that and see beyond this personality, this body, and my mind and my thoughts and my feelings is just the condition of how I've arrived. And the me who is me is the observer that sees all of those things. And the more that you remember that, then the more you can enjoy the creative exploration of the who you want to create. And that's really up to you, Once you know the true self of who you are, then all of the rest of it becomes what they call the cosmic joke. The great teachers talk about this. It's like, oh, when you realize the cosmic joke of life, then why so serious? So for me, that's kind of that's where my head's at with that at the moment.
That's awesome. And the next question is, if you won the lottery tomorrow and finances were not a concern, what would you do differently about your life?
Not much, to be honest.
Really?
Like, it'd just be more about establishing and grounding, like probably setting up structures and foundations to then expand what it is that I do. So I'd probably, own the studio instead of teach at the studio. I'd probably create part of my life's work that I'm currently working on is creating a program for artists to help develop them in a holistic manner. So support around addiction stuff, support around creativity stuff, lifestyle, physical yoga, spiritual stuff, and create a whole program that can help grow artists so they don't have to lose their soul in the industry, and then be able to take what it is that they do to the next level. But that's a work in progress that I'm working on at the moment. So probably pay all of my family's bills and spend more time with them. That's important to me.
That's beautiful. And the final question is, what is an ideal day in the life for you? It can be work related or non-work related.
Ideal, I think ideal day in the life for me would incorporate teaching, would incorporate practicing, would incorporate time with family. I'm probably having a nap.
Afternoon nap?
I love an afternoon siesta, so that'd be nice. And then probably more time with the people that I love. Like, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. My son and my daughter both love the pool, so hanging out in a nice pool and getting time to chill there, it's nice, very simple and very
simple
easy.
things in life. Well, Cameron, that's the end of the interview. I love chatting to you, and thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cool.
All right.
Let's say bye.
See you guys.